Welcome back. This is Your View on Newsroom Africa, Channel 405. What's this, you ask? Well, of course, I'm standing in for JJ Tabane, so this kind of had to be there. There's a bit of pressure here, JJ. Your people are saying that I must do exactly as you do and give some kind of a rant. And I don't know, as we say, JJ is inimitable. So I don't know, we'll have this here and see how we go and how the show goes going forward. But let me tell you what we've got coming up though, a bit later on, and I've been saying that I look forward to a conversation that I will have with Billy Munama, and I'm starting right at the end. That's the last hour of the show from around 11 p.m. And he's a man who's really passionate about preserving our heritage, our musical heritage. And just before the conversation, I was listening to the penny whistle in one of the songs that he plays, and there's a penny whistle playing. Trust me, my 2000. My 2000 hardly, not many would know what a penny whistle is. And I think that really captures what the conversation is about. If we don't preserve our musical heritage, we will lose it. And what are we losing when we lose that heritage? But way before we get to that, we'll have a conversation in the 10 o'clock hour where we'll be looking at the role of our culture and our heritage in the problems that we face as a society, such as patriarchy, as well as violence perpetrated by men on women. And then we'll be talking about that to say, what's the contribution there, but also how can culture and some of our customs actually contribute to countering those problems that we face. But before we get there, of course, I'll have a conversation with Malaika wa Azania, who basically says what former President Thabo Mbeki delivered in KZN to the loud cheers of Zizi was basically not the Robert Mugabe lecture. And she says that we will know when we actually hear a Robert Mugabe lecture. But let's reflect then on the week that was. And what a week it's been. Let's start with this Constitutional Court judgment that we saw a bit earlier on in the week. In fact, a few days ago, was it yesterday? It basically came to the conclusion that parents no longer have this defense of saying, when they spank a child, they can go to court and say it was reasonable and moderate chastisement. That's fallen off. The Constitutional Court says it's not consistent with the values of our Constitution, but also particularly the rights in Section 12 and Section 10, the right to be free from all forms of violence, that's Section 12, and also to human dignity, and also Section 28, which talks about the paramountcy of the rights of a child in any matter involving a child. So the debate rages on. I did say that the Constitutional Court ends the legal debate, but the moral debate, the social debate continues. Take a listen to what President Cyril Ramaphosa had to say weighing in on this judgment.
Now today the Constitutional Court has handed down an extremely significant judgment, declaring corporal punishment in the home to be unconstitutional. When we talk about violence against children, we focus on sexual abuse, but the battering of children is a very serious problem that must also get sufficient attention. Children do need and must be protected from all forms of violence, whether it is in the home, in the streets, or in the schools. That is what the Constitution of our country dictates. This judgment will send a strong message that beating of children will not be tolerated at all costs.
And of course, you've heard many parents saying that, well, the Constitution is there in the country, but in my house, my rules. You live under my roof, you will obey my rules and live by my rules. It's really a complex matter. I think personally that it has to do with the Constitution that we wrote, that we abide by as South Africans. If you put this practice of spanking through the lens and you put it through the prism of the Constitution, many would say the outcome was almost predictable, that it was more than likely to go in this direction, that it would be found to be inconsistent. But now, many people have been asking, when you reasonably chastise a child and spank a child, does it even amount to violence? And I think that's part of where the conversation is. But when all of us are failing to make sense of something, right, you can always trust comedians to make sense of it. Let's hear then from Trevor Noah what it's about. Is it spanking or is it beating up a child? Take a listen to this.
It's because of Oprah. She didn't know how to interview these people. This wasn't Brad Pitt she was talking to, you know? She came in, she was like, "You're not gonna spank these kids, are you?" And the headmaster was like, "No, never. Never. No, we can never spank a child, never." She was like, "Okay then, bye-bye." She went on her plane, whew, back to America. The principal was there. "Hi, Oprah. Yeah, umuntu right, as who right then? Hi." "No, never. Us spanking a child, never. We beat them." "Ah, we beat. That's what, yeah, we beat children. Don't spank a child, yeah. Spanking is for playing. You can spank a monkey. Spanky, spanky. Spanky, spanky, monkey, spanky, spanky, yeah. You can spank a monkey, don't spank a child. We beat." That's what happened. Those kids got beatings for no reason. There was always these cases. Teachers walking into the classroom, losing their minds. "Mavis, did you do your homework?" "No, ma'am." "Then you're going to get a beating. Yeah, a beating for you. But because it's opera school, everybody's getting one. You're getting a beating, you're getting a beating, you're getting a beating. Everybody's getting a beating. Look under your seat, you're getting a beating."
Ah, the great Trevor Noah. It's a really serious issue, and I do think that the conversation and the debate will continue around that judgment. I want to move on quickly now and bring someone into focus. Muse Maimane, right? Muse Maimane, the leader of the DA, he demands, rightly so, within his rights, within our rights, accountability from government officials, from the president, the money from Bosasa. Part of the reason why it became such a monkey on President Ramaphosa's back was partly because of what Muse Maimane raised in Parliament. That's great. But I do think that Muse Maimane also owes us a few answers then about this house in Claremont, in Cape Town. I mean, this is a house that is said to be valued at almost 4 million rand. He lists it in the registry in Parliament. But as it turns out, it doesn't seem that he owns the house. So it raises a number of questions. Why declare it when you don't own it? I mean, it's very clear. It's not property that you own. Otherwise, unless there's another story there that we're not being told, is it a gratuity of some kind of sort? Does he stay there rent-free? I guess those are the questions that then come to the fore when it emerges that he actually doesn't own the house. So I do think that Muse Maimane, you can't hide away from this one. You do need to give us some answers. Who is Wessels Jacobs? And what's the relationship between the two of you, the person who's said to own this house? And of course, these are important questions because the DA is not just in opposition. It actually runs government in one province of the 9 and also in a significant number of municipalities, including 3 metros. And as you and I now know, we've learned in Tshwane and elsewhere that saying, "Trust us because we are not the ANC," is just not good enough. So sooner rather than later, Muse Maimane, come forward, give us some answers. And of course, interviewing Muse Maimane can be a bit tricky there when you ask certain questions and he points you to say, if you want to know about that, why don't you ask Helen Zille instead of asking me? But we do hope on this one, he will take us into his confidence. And then I want to reflect on this thing, this meeting that took place, extraordinary sitting of the 2 houses of Parliament. This is provided for in the Constitution. The President can call a joint sitting for special business to be attended to, and he actually did that this week. And he set out an emergency action plan, which will be implemented over the next 6 months. So it's great that it comes with a certain amount attached to it. 1.1 billion rand additional funding that the president says he has committed towards the fight against violence against women perpetrated by men. Let's stop calling it gender-based violence and taking away the agency of it as if it's just happening, by accident, that, there's just a force of nature. We have this phenomenon, gender-based violence. It's violence perpetrated by men on women. And I know many will say not all men, and no one is saying all men. So sit down. Let's talk about the actual issue rather than semantics. So violence perpetrated by men against women. 1.1 billion rand promised by the president. He says he's going to build 11 more sexual offences courts within this next financial year. That's okay. What I don't understand is how it takes 6 years to build the additional 46 that will take us from the current 54 to 100. Come on, guys, I don't know. I don't know what it takes to build a sexual offences court. And I imagine that it has special requirements for it to be friendly to victims and survivors, et cetera, to enable people to testify under special conditions if that is needed. But 6 years to build 46 seems to be a bit of a long time. But anyway, we've got that graphic there because we want to say to you, Mr. President, we are watching very closely. You are leading a nation, sir, that has actually had enough of the abuse of women, and we will be holding you to those promises you made, the increases in the Thuthuzela care centers, and making sure that they work well. All of that you will be held to account for. So I want to then also talk quickly about Ranjeni Munusamy, right? Ranjeni, a senior journalist. I know her very well, friend of mine. Karima Brown as well, also coming into the spotlight around this report that came from 702, Advocate Terry Motau, again delivering a report that's got us talking. Take a listen to what was said about Ranjeni Munusamy at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry.
It was an amount of 143,621.78 cents. It was paid from the Atlantis Motors business account to West Bank vehicle finance account in the settlement agreement of a vehicle registered in the name of Ms. Ranjeni Munusamy. And as far as I know, she is a journalist. This amount reflected as received on the same date in the West Bank vehicle finance account held in the name of Ranjeni Munusamy. This amount was debited against the Atlantis Motors Beirut account on the 30th of July 2008. In other words, what had happened here, according to Mr. Venter, is he was requested to pay over an amount of money into this West Bank vehicle finance access account, and at the later stage he then debited the Beirut account against the company account to settle the amount which has been paid. So effectively what it means is that the amount was covered by the Beirut account, which is funded through the sale of vehicles to the SSA, to crime intelligence.
Before you proceed, Chair, we have received a letter of sorts which corrected the name of Ranjeni Munusamy to Navaranjeni Munusamy, which is spelled Navaranjeni, surname Munusamy.
So I don't think I have much to add on that, except to say that we've been under the spotlight as a media industry for our conduct and our behavior, how we conduct ourselves. These two incidents, the mentioning of Ranjeni Munusamy at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, but also the Karima Brown, the report from 702, and the sort of clash and sort of conflict that took place there between 702 and Karima Brown. There's a lot for us as an industry to reflect on how we do our business. And the conversation continues. Let's be part of it. Let's open up and open ourselves up to scrutiny and actually weed out what is not needed in our industry and allow for things to come out. And certainly I would support that wholeheartedly. All right, you are watching Your View. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane, sitting in for J.That, enjoying his mic. In a moment, I have a conversation with Malaika wa Azania. We are talking that all-important Thabo Mbeki lecture in KwaZulu-Natal, where he was reflecting on the legacy of Robert Mugabe. And Malaika wa Azania, simply unimpressed. Stay tuned for that conversation.